I'm Chaplain Jacob Scott of the Oregon National Guard. This is the Hope in the Trenches podcast. Where going forward, I'll sit down for conversations with people who offer interesting and informative perspectives on finding strength for life and work in the trenches, and even improving our spiritual posture. Whether you feel like you're under heavy bombardment or ready to go over the top toward a new objective, it's good to be with you.
Good to go.
Great. Well, Colonel Grossman, Dave, thanks so much for joining us on Hope in the Trenches this morning.
My pleasure, Chaplain. An honor to have you and Paul on board today. And I'm here to serve. Tell me where we want to go. Let's have some fun.
Well, our big idea is living and leading with hope, and I know we'll get there, having heard you and speak before and having read some of your books. And really, it's been fundamental for how I've understood the warrior task and what those who raise their right hand to serve in the military have been asked to do, and to potentially to lay their lives on the line. So I'll just start it off. You started a research group called the Killology Research Group, yeah. And could you tell us what that is? And well, because it's not about teaching people to kill, is it?
Right. Yeah, it was intentionally provocative from the beginning. Back in 1995, when my book on killing came out, and we're in the process of rebranding now. Grossman on Truth, It's funny. I had a guy from France. The book on killing is done amazing. It's 500,000 copies sold in English, translated to 7 languages now. Google Scholar, which is, scholar.google.com. It's a really interesting resource. It says it's been cited over 3,000 times in scholarly works, on killing. Mm-hmm. So it was intentionally provocative. It got people's attention. It's really the only really deep scholarly book ever really done on this subject. And a guy from France sent me an email. He said, I was on an airplane reading this book, and I could have been reading child pornography, and they wouldn't have treated me so bad, just looking at the title. So, in France, it was like taboo to even, evil to talk about a book on killing. Well, mm-hmm. That same dynamic has come over here now. What was useful and provocative, Killology, is now kind of counterproductive. So we're rebranding. But, sexology, suicidology, suicidology is not about teaching how to commit suicide. Criminology is not about teaching how to be a criminal. Killology is not about teaching to kill. It's about understanding the factors that enable and restrain killing in our society. What I tell people is the hard thing to explain is not that 1 in a million terrible crime. It's the 99.9% of our citizens go a lifetime never kill anybody or even seriously attempt to. Explain that. Mm-hmm. Divorce, infidelity, layoff, traffic accidents, in a lifetime of provocation. Less than 1 in 1,000 citizens will even seriously attempt to take a human life. Explain that. So there's this whole array of factors that restrain violence in our society. And we know how we can turn them on and turn them off. And that's got direct application on what's going on in society today and how we can control violence and what we're doing. And it spins out in an entirely different field. Medical technology is holding down the murder rate year after year. The number of dead people mm-hmm. completely misrepresent the situation. The entire field of criminology, the entire field of criminal justice is lying to us every year when they give us the murder rate and don't allow for medical technology. I was invited to the White House to brief Vice President Pence. I told him, it's like we talk about minimum wage year over year without allowing for inflation. What if I said, well, you make $20 an hour. Your grandpa made 25 cents an hour. Look how good you've got it. Well, we all know the lie right off the bat. Boom, inflation. When we say, wow, the murder rate's up, but it's still not as bad as it was in the 1960s. Boom, we should get the lie right there. Mm-hmm. It's bad. It's desperately bad. And so this whole study of killing and the dynamics has really made a contribution. The whole field of criminology and criminal justice just doesn't want to go there. It's actually much, much worse than it looks. And right off the bat, in one sentence, you can convince any audience that these guys are misrepresenting the situation. So that's all kind of aspects of killology. And understanding how we turn it on and turn it off. And we understand military training that makes killing a conditioned reflex. We understand we do it with safeguards to adults. And even then, there's cause for concern. We also understand the video games can potentially be doing the same thing for a whole generation as they play these hyper-realistic video games to get the same condition response. So that's kind of killology in a nutshell, if you will.
Yeah, because it's such a part of human history, and we're really only, I think, maybe peeling back some of the outside layers on what killing does to a person, to the human, and the trauma that those violent acts impose upon a person. Yeah. Nature is red in tooth and claw, right? And that this violence has. So how do we manage it? How do we prevent it? Yeah. And of course, I think maybe it was you in one of your presentations the first time I heard the phrase that, we need sheepdogs. And that the sheep are always afraid of the sheepdog until the wolf comes around. But the fact of human history and in human existence is that there are wolves, and so we need people to stand in between the wolves and those to whom they would seek to do harm.
Yeah. I did a piece in an archaeology journal, co-authored a piece with an archaeologist a while back about how historical battles have completely misrepresented. The winner wants to claim that he killed all these guys in this battle. But when we look at the archaeological remnants, we see that the actual battle, there's very little killing, is during the pursuit phase. We got this long, drawn-out archaeological chain of dead bodies and debris during the pursuit phase. And then you get the chariot and the cavalry and those who have mobility advantages that do most of the killing. And a lot of them just, said, sod this for a game of soldiers and went home. In the war in Panama, when we invaded Panama, we had this initial estimate of all these number of dead people. And then they went and checked up on them all, and a big bunch of them just went to their home village and got on with life. They threw away this stuff, slipped off in the jungle, went to their home village, and went back to life. And what we thought we destroyed this unit, a large portion of them, they weren't dead, they weren't wounded, they just went home. And that's this representation of what's really been happening in combat throughout history. And the winner says, I killed all these guys. And most of them just, they were killed in the pursuit phase afterwards, or they just went home. And they're happy to let the king or the victor take credit for killing them, and they got on with their lives. This misrepresentation of killing throughout history is really really pretty powerful. I think we made a real contribution, and certainly as far as the scholarly application upon killing in Google Scholar, it's been really rewarding to see it being used in so many different aspects.
I heard it said recently that one of the key tasks for chaplains in the military is to prepare people to die. At the same time, we owe it to people to prepare them for the eventuality that they might be called upon to take a human life in defense of others and in defense of all the things that we hold dear.
I think the heart of that revolves around this concept of love. And, the opposite of evil is love. Evil is the absence of love, just as darkness is the absence of light. And it's our love for our country, our love for our comrades. Men don't die in battle for some cause. They die for the guy next to him. Audie Murphy, a most decorated American soldier, was asked one time why he did it. And his answer was, they were killing my friends. That's his manifestation of love. Not only is love the opposite of evil. Stephen Pressfield in Gates of Fire, what's the opposite of fear? Love quenches fear as water quenches fire. The Bible says, that we were not given a spirit of fear, but of sound mind and of love. The Bible says perfect love casts out fear. So it's our motivation, our love for our family. I'm doing a lot of work with law enforcement right now, and they're just hurting so bad. Retention is down, recruiting is down. They're being attacked and condemned on the streets on a daily basis. Just pray for our cops. It's hard to believe the hell a lot of them are living in. LAPD right now is paying a $25,000 signing bonus for anybody who lateral transfers from any other agency in America to come to LAPD. $25,000 check right now, just come to LAPD, and they can't get anybody. Nobody wants to have anything to do with it. We know about the prosecutor in LA if you're paying any attention to what's going on. We know about law and order. We know about cops under attack. And that's this dynamic of why do we keep doing what we do? Oh, I'm 65 years old. I spend the vast majority of my time on the road away from my brother, 47 years, my high school sweetheart, because I love my children, I love my grandchildren, I love my nation, I love my God. And in these hard times, in combat, it's love for each other that sustains people. And I think in these dark times, it's love for our God, it's love for our country, and love for our family that sustains us. And one of the other angles in all of that, one of the things that come unglued, we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and we do the national anthem before every ball game. There is a biological need in every human being to be part of a larger group. Excuse me. One person in the jungle by themselves is cat food. 10 people with spears is the most dangerous alpha predator on the planet. So our group is our nation. We're just filled with dynamics that draw us together as a nation, the Pledge of Allegiance, the national anthem. So when some athlete dishonors the pledge and dishonors the anthem, if it's cool to be unpatriotic, then who will they give their allegiance to? And the gangs will fill that gap in a blink of an eye. Every athlete that dishonors the anthem, takes a knee during the anthem, that they're recruiters for gangbangers, and the gangs have exploded in numbers. And when your nation tells you to kill people, you do. Your nation says it's World War II, go to Germany, kill Nazis, Roger out. And they're telling their gangbangers to kill cops. Cops are evil, and they do. Last year, we had the single worst year-over-year increase in cops murdered in the history of our nation. Every year, cops have better body armor, better tactics, better medical technology. The only good measure, the year-over-year increase. We've never seen anything remotely like what happened last year as far as cops murdered in the line of duty. And as of August last year, we had more cops murdered than all the previous year put together. And that was a bad year. And this year, it's going to be worse. It's compound interest. So this whole dynamic of the breakdown of our structure, love for our nation, love for our family, love for our God, that's what sustains us. That's what the chaplain brings to the table. And we don't do what we do out of hate. We don't do what we do. We do it to protect what we love. And that manifestation of sacrificial love brings us back to Jesus and is the most powerful, towering, transformational process in human history. And I think that idea of the chaplains, preparing people to die. What are men prepared to die for? Well, around the world, a mama critter of most species will die for babies, but they won't die for anybody else's babies. What manner of love is this that men will walk out the door and lay their life down for strangers? Mm-hmm. That's what our cops do every day. So again, that dynamic of the chaplain is so well put and far deeper than people would think.
So in my vocation, or in my civilian vocation, in my faith tradition as a pastor, I'm a Lutheran pastor by trade. I actually went to seminary and spent the better part of 6 years in and around St. Louis, and so I'm very familiar with that area. But so in my tradition, we use an old German word, Seelsorger, which literally means the one who cares for the soul, to describe that vocation of a pastor or a chaplain or a minister. But right, we do train people who are willing to step into dangerous situations and be prepared to do violence. And so Paul and I had a great conversation yesterday about some of that training and really the moral basis for it, because we want our warriors to make informed decisions in a split second when life and death is on the line. And Paul, you had a great question or a great observation on that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We said on killing that I enlisted in 1974. It was post-Me Lie. And we were like the very first soldiers who were taught how to disobey an order. And throughout human history, nobody taught soldiers, you will disobey this order. This is how you disobey an order. You go to the chain of command, and if that doesn't work, go to the chaplain. And the chaplain is actually an alternative mechanism for this moral dynamic. What a revolution in human history that the U.S. Armed Forces are really far and away, without a doubt, I think the first armed forces in human history been systematically taught, no, you don't obey an unlawful order. You don't. So, when it comes time for you to be tried, the fact you're obeying orders is not going to get you out of trouble. And what a revolution in our armed forces, and what a thing to be proud of, I think, to recognize that kind of growth as an armed forces and the way we led into this realm of creating people more than ever who were expected to make those moral decisions at the moment of truth.
Sure. No, absolutely. And I think, some of the big pieces that I get from your book is, training, first of all, and then being, proficient and efficient at your job. There's a target, it's up, I see it, I engage it, it's down. And then when you get put in the real world and you're doing it for real, when you have that muscle memory and you've developed those skills, I think as a leader and as a soldier, you're able to make those decisions, in a calmer, more organized fashion. So you're not just killing indiscriminately, or you're just not, running around like a chicken with your head cut off, but you're actually doing something systematically, or there is a greater purpose that's nested into some type of mission, a higher mission as well. And so that's one of the pieces that I always was very thankful for as far as some of my training was that, I enjoy, it's fun to go to the range, you test your skills and do those type of things. But then what you don't understand, what you're doing subconsciously is a lot of the things that are described in your book. And it was one of the things that, really kind of resonated with me as I came back, after one of my more exciting deployments, we'll call, and I started reflecting a little bit. I was like, oh yeah, that there is something to that. That training is important, not just to desensitize, but in order to be a more effective leader, a more effective force.
Right. One of my books, Assassination Generation, has invited the White House as part of President Trump's roundtable on violent video games, and personally handed the president a copy of the book, and then I was briefing Vice President Pence. And if we understand how pop-up targets become a conditioned response, then I think as military, we've got something to bring to the table, say, hey, the violent video games could be doing the same thing to the kids.
Sure.
And this could very much be a new factor in the equation. We've never had juveniles committing mass murders in their schools in human history. I always throw up a picture of an M1 carbine. World War II, 7 million M1 carbines were manufactured, 20, 30-round magazines, semi-automatic. They were junk. You could buy them. In 1948, an 8-year-old could walk in the hardware store, buy an M1 carbine, and walk out the door. And yet these crimes never happened. The weapon is basically ballistically identical to the weapons committing these massacres now. We got to ask ourselves, what is the new factor? And I think us in the military environment, after 20 years of war, we can come home and say, look, this is what's happening to our children. This is the new factor. We know how to train men and women to kill. And we know these video games, these murder simulators being inflicted upon children are a new ingredient in the equation. It could be doing the same thing to children. And not all of them, but all you need is 1 in a million, and you've got the most horrific crime you could imagine happening on a steady basis. So there's an application. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. And in many ways, the best part of the Lord of the Rings is the hobbits coming home and sorting out the Shire afterwards and using their skills and their knowledge and their abilities to come back home and sort things out at home. And I think it's time, after 20 years of war, for those who've been in the military to stand up and say, hey, we know how this training empowered us as adults under discipline and with cause for some concern. But now we see the same thing being done indiscriminately to our children. I talk in Assassination Generation. In 2005, the state of California overwhelmingly voted to regulate children's access to violent video games. The data was that powerful. Home of Hollywood, home of Silicon Valley, Arnold Schwarzenegger signed the law. Nobody knows that. The video game industry fought all the way to the Supreme Court to sell any game to any kid at any age. And they conned 7 old men that never played Pong in their life, overturning the Supreme Court, overturning the California law. And again, for those of us who understand the killing enabling processes and military training, we should say, and again, the data in 2005 was so enormously overwhelming. The whole state of California overwhelmingly voted for this law. And this industry fought all the way to the Supreme Court, and they lied. The selling game to any kid at any age. And that's a piece of history they want to go away. again, that's what, we can come home. We can take our military experience and apply it and say there's something wrong here. We know what the new ingredient is.
Yeah, and so
and it was so.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave. Yeah. So we spend a lot of time and effort training people to go into situations that are incredibly complex, dynamic, violent, and to survive. And so there are some adaptive behaviors that we developed in order to survive in dangerous situations in combat zones. And maybe a broad term for some of that is combat stress. The stress of that environment shapes some of our behaviors. We learn how to adapt and how to survive. A lot of those behaviors that serve us well in the villages, in Nasiriyah or in Sadr City in Iraq or in a mud-walled village in Afghanistan, and the heightened awareness, the attention to detail, things like that helps you survive in that environment. It doesn't work so well in Main Street, or if you're if you're sitting in Starbucks or even sitting in church or in a classroom. Some of those same things that we learn in those environments aren't. You've got to learn how to come back. What do you think goes into that, and how can you turn it on and turn it off, or what are your thoughts on transitioning back?
First off, one of our greatest challenges out there. When I teach about Hollywood gives us two goofy myths. First is the pity party, the idea that everyone's been destroyed by war.
Right.
And, the Vietnam veteran really was spit on a vast scale. I demonstrated in the book. It's irrefutable. The Vietnam veteran was called baby killer. They were spit on. They were attacked. The anti-war movement focused on the individual and their evil. Well, the anti-war movement in this war says they're broken. They're all damaged goods. Mm-hmm. So you've heard 22 veterans a day take their life, something like that. But the word veteran and combat veteran are two different things. When they say 22 veterans a day take their life, in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, early 70s, they drafted everybody. Elvis Presley was drafted. He served 2 years. If Elvis was still alive, and if Elvis took his life, he would be one of those 22 veterans a day who take their life. Yeah. And most people didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the myth. You're either a Medal of Honor recipient or you're on the verge of suicide or homelessness.
Yeah. When the truth is, and when we look at incidents of PTSD, they all have PTSD and they're all suicidal. Well, the very best study we have, and I always throw up a screenshot from the VA website, basically about 10% of the adult population, you push the right button and you get a post-traumatic response. The baseline PTSD in the population may be around 10%. Among the veterans, just about 5% more contract PTSD. The bottom line is the British studied their troops in Afghanistan. The Dutch studied their troops. Our best studies of our troops, actual clinical diagnosis on the ground, about 5% contract PTSD. And we're darn good at treating it. Now, as for those who claim PTSD when they get out, that's a different story. Sure. And there's a book coming out shortly that I wrote a piece on that's going to really, really deal with that. A lot of high-powered general officers are getting behind how the VA system is broken. A lot of people don't know, but Omar Bradley, after World War II, was part of a study of the VA system, and he said it's broken. We're creating a system where people have an incentive to claim psychiatric casualties and to never get better, and that problem still exists. So just understand this misrepresentation that they're all broken. They all have PTSD. No, they don't. About 5% contract PTSD. We're darn good at treating it. They're all suicidal. No, they're not. We can talk a lot more about this explosion of suicide worldwide. One of the new ingredients, one of the most important ingredients, is sleep deprivation. Mm-hmm. A sleep-deprived soldier is up to 5 times more likely to take their life. The best meta-study on suicide said not only is sleep deprivation a key factor in suicide, it's the most remediable factor. If you wanted to do something about suicide, boom, the very first thing you do is sleep deprivation, and make sure they get sufficient sleep. So this myth that they're all broken, they're all suicidal, and they're all homicidal, that's the current anti-war attack on our veterans. It's like the Vietnam veterans being spit on. this horrendous misrepresentation. 10% of the prison population veterans. Well, 20% of adult American males are veterans. The veteran and combat veteran are two different things. And if they come to the military and they're a dirtbag and we kick them out, they're still a veteran and they still count against us. So in jail. So this myth that they're all destroyed should enrage us. But
Sure.
there is a portion who need our help, and we're darn good at giving it. I spoke at a Friday before last. I spoke. It was a mental health day at an Air Force base in Florida, and the one thing their mental health providers said is we're really, really good at treating PTSD. We have an enormous success rate. The vast majority come out the other end with post-traumatic growth, and so we're really good at treating PTSD. We get better every year, but you got to come to us. You got to let us know you have a problem. There's no shame in getting help. The pity party and the macho man, I don't need any help. I can macho it out. That's crazy. The docs are good. I tell cops, how can you help other people if you can't help yourself?
Yeah.
And go into treatment expecting you're going to get better. And the veterans of this war are the new greatest generation. And they have post-traumatic growth. And the ones who have PTSD and get better, they have post-traumatic growth. The end state of trauma is growth. I think it was Hemingway said, life breaks everyone, and usually we're stronger in the broken spots. And that's that dynamic of post-traumatic growth. So this mirror, this broken generation, they're all suicidal and they're all homicidal and they all have PTSD. This should enrage us. A new greatest generation coming home. I think we should have incredible hope for what the veterans, they represent the very best. And we talk about our veterans in this war, something to think about. 4 years into the war, there was nobody left who enlisted before the war and got stuck with the war. So right about 4, 5, 6 years into the war, every single person had raised the right hand to enlist or re-enlist in time of war. The last time we fought a war with 100% wartime volunteers was American Revolution. Starting in 1812, we always had people enlist before the war, got stuck with the war. Longer as well as had the draft. The warriors who answered the nation's call in 20 years of war are magnificent. My grandson just enlisted in the Indiana Guard. I would have concerns about it, but Indiana Guard's not a bad place to be. He's in basic training right now, 20 years old, 2 years of college. But I have mixed emotions about my grandson being in the Army under the current leadership. I'm glad he didn't ask anybody; he just went and did it. He's going to be an intel analyst. That's what he chose. But I'm glad he decided to go with the Guard. Especially a Guard of a state like Indiana. But these are crazy times, and this attack on our veterans, and now the current leadership dynamic, they're cause for concern. And those who do choose to answer the nation's call really represent in many ways our best. And we're able to make them better people when they come out the other end. We truly are.
I think like anything, soldiers are just people, right? And so like when you experience anything, you want to try to process it and understand it. And so just because I come back from, multiple tours and I'm trying to process all this stuff and I go, try to find help, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm broken. It doesn't mean that I can't be productive or, that I need to have some type of pity party, as you say. But, I'm just trying to gather resources in order to better process it and to live a better life that learns from it, and that's the thing is like, when I got back, I talked to all my soldiers, like I'm very, very vocal about, I treat my brain just as much as I treat my back or my legs or my arms or anything. I need to go to the gym. I need to work it out. And then if there's something wrong with it, I go see a professional to kind of get their look at it. And, I don't see behavioral health as any different or the chaplain corps, going and having conversations and trying to understand it and process it. And I think that's the one thing is like we like to put people in buckets, right? And the soldiers go in this bucket and they're like, well, we're people first, right? And just like I said, anything, I think anyone in this world is just trying to make sense of it. I want to make sense of what happened over there and how I can grow from it. And I think it's important that we go out and we do that. But I strongly agree. And that's one of the coolest things I really like about this generation of soldiers is, we're coming back and, we may be in our 20s, 30s, 40s, but we're realizing, we still have a whole nother life to live. There's things that we can do. And you start seeing these really cool races. You start seeing these really cool veteran groups that are going out. They're doing these incredible things opposed to maybe just bellying up to the bar and telling war stories for the next 30 years. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy watching with this generation of soldiers is, you're taught some very valuable lessons early in war, whether you're 20 or 30 or something, and to take those lessons and then apply them to life. It's pretty cool to watch some of the soldiers do some things in some of the organizations that are coming out. And so that's what I always tell soldiers too, is like, hey, don't fall into this poor me guy party. Go ahead and embrace these other things. And if you can't find them, make some. There's nothing out there that says you can't.
It's a critical point. We've got, at West Point as a psych professor, we present cases. Soldier shot in combat. He thinks he's going to die, so he dies.
Yep.
And we got another person who's shot multiple times who got his mindset, I'm going to drive on. One of the things we say on killing is you can lose a gallon of blood. You can just pour a gallon of strawberry milk on the concrete, glug, 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 glug. That's how much blood you can lose and not lose hydraulics. You got to have this mindset that I can suck up shots and drive on. And we hold up examples like that. There really are examples of people who are shot once with a non-life-threatening wound who died because they think they should. Well, how much more so have we got people getting PTSD because they think they should? And we've just got to be vigorous in confronting that and saying, no, you're going to be stronger for this experience. Even if you have PTSD, we're going to treat it, going to come out the other end stronger. And I think that's really well put. We're trying to come to terms with what happened. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you should come out the other end with post-traumatic growth. And really, that's the key thing we want to hold out there is this a new greatest generation, post-traumatic growth.
That learning, that adaptation, taking those experiences, problem solving under extreme duress and doing something better. That was one phrase that I heard, probably 10, 15 years ago already was, don't let your military service be the last great thing that you did. Don't let your deployments to Iraq or Afghanistan be the last great thing that you ever did. Well, of course, Dave, you're an example of that, where you took your experiences in the military and the opportunities that the military gave you, and you've turned it into a career and a message beyond. And it was the Honorable Patrick Murphy. He was acting Secretary of the Army probably around like 2016, 17. And he said, every soldier is a leader of character for a lifetime of service, which is just an incredibly powerful message. And the Chief of Chaplains, Tom Soldrum, Chaplain Major General Tom Soldrum, too, he says, we want to return our people to their communities whole and healthy and stronger than they were before. It doesn't mean there won't be scars, because we ask people to do some difficult things, but to be able to contribute.
For me right now, I got out in 97, December 97, and I've now been out longer than I was in. I served 24 years, and I'm in my, well in my 25th year doing this. And when I got out, I thought, I've got a few years left. I'll see if I do something productive. Now here I am, having actually spent more time doing this. And I have every cause to hope that I can do it for another 20 years. So we've got this concept that, when we retire, we're this ancient old creature who is not good for anything anymore. And the truth is just the opposite. Just that there's so much left in front of you. You served honorably, but you build from that, you grow from that, and throughout your lifespan. This idea, I remember as a young private in the orderly room in 82nd Airborne Division, and First Sergeant Donald R. Wingrove, who'd been a Sn2Ep raider in Vietnam Special Forces, and I thought it was ancient. I thought it was just like this ancient creature who was just one step away from the grave. At most he was in his early 40s, probably his late 30s. He wasn't ancient, he wasn't old. But you've got guys in their unit that look at you right now, Paul, and they say this guy's one step away from the grave. He's going to retire, and that's going to be it. No. Yeah. You have 2/3 of your adult lifetime still in front of you, even after serving for a quarter of a century. Ideally. And so this idea that how much more we've got to give, you're not broken, you're not done. I think it's such a powerful message to pass on.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Dave, I want to be respectful of your time. So
I got all the time. That's all I'm doing today.
Oh, thanks so much. Because I do want to touch. One of my reasons for existence, or reasons for being a chaplain, is to help people understand and develop a hope and a strength that comes that's even greater. And so one of your recent books, and my copy just came yesterday in the mail, on spiritual combat, and the Army's new Holistic Health and Fitness Manual, FM7-22, which I believe it used to be just physical fitness, right, and physical readiness training. But now when we talk about holistic health and fitness, the Army is trying to address not just the physical fitness, but mental readiness, sleep hygiene, diet as well. And then, of course, what thrilled me and has really been fruitful for starting some conversations is spiritual readiness is one of those 5 pillars of holistic health. How do you maintain spiritual fitness, and why do you think that's so important, Dave?
Well, first off, sleep. I teach, if I had 30 minutes to teach any law enforcement class, any military class, I'd talk about sleep deprivation. We're in the middle of this global epidemic of sleep deprivation. The key factor in suicides. It's a key factor in traffic deaths. It's a key factor in the opiate overdoses. Sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. Doc, I heard all the time, give me a pill to fix. You don't need a pill, you need more sleep.
Yeah.
And you got to knock off those mega doses of caffeine in the evening that are stopping you from getting deep cycle sleep. And the tendons and muscles never get a chance to fully relax. So 3 major epidemics have exploded around the world. Suicide has exploded. Traffic deaths after decade, we brought traffic deaths down. Airbags, seatbelts, medical technology. Now for the last decade, everywhere they're back up again. There's a reason why airline pilots and truck drivers are required to get enough sleep. And then, like I said, this opiate epidemic. Why opiates? Why are opiates a drug of choice? Prescription opiates have always been there. What is the new factor driving the demand? It all comes back to this global epidemic of sleep deprivation. Mm-hmm. And I trained one unit, and the sergeant major told me on their last combat deployment, they were in a barracks environment, more or less, at night. Then they'd punch out into combat during the day. And the sergeant major said, it's lights out after 10 o'clock. He said, if I catch you playing video games after 10 o'clock, I'm going to take your games. He said, in a week, I had a closet overflowing with video games. He said, these are good troops. They wouldn't disobey an order. They can't not play those games. And they're designed to make us lose track of time. They put us in a flow state. They're designed to do that based on billions of dollars of research. Binge watching TV shows, the internet never sleeps, social media all night long. And this industry is Facebook's never going to say, you've been online for the last 48 hours straight, you need some sleep. They're not going to tell you that. The head of Netflix said their number one competitor is not other online providers. The number one competitor is sleep. The corporate policy of Netflix is to steal your sleep. So this global epidemic of sleep deprivation, and there's entire industries that just want to use you up and throw you away. They don't care about the health impact of what's happening. So I really watch my sleep. I really practice what I preach. And I work hard on getting enough sleep. And I wore a Fitbit for a while. The Fitbit does a very good job at tracking your sleep hours. And really put me on the right cycle. It made me keep track of my sleep and laid a good foundation for me. My faith, my wife and I pray for each other every night. When I'm away, I got picked up by a young Marine lieutenant driving to 29 Palms Marine Base, and my wife was going to bed, and in outside of St. Louis, at home, and I kind of leaned away, and I said our nightly prayer for each other, and it goes into some depth and family, and young Marine Lieutenant said, I was kind of hoping he didn't hear what I was saying. He said, "That's really beautiful." He says, "You guys do that every night?" I say, "Every night, without fail." So, the Bible says, "Wherever 2 or 3 gathered in my name, there am I in your midst." And I think I say that there's a special mojo in your prayer when there's you and somebody else in that prayer, and you and your wife, are your prayer buddies, every night holding up in prayer. I think that's one of the sustainment issues that we've been able to use to carry us over time. Physically, the blind spot is sleep deprivation. It's eating us alive. And then spiritually, to be able to embrace that, to apply it to your family, to apply it to your daily activities and truly daily prayers. And you can give it to God at the end of every day and hold each other up in prayer, and hold our loved ones up in prayer. Those are truly powerful sustainment issues.
Well, I think these are all related. It was one of my professors at the seminary, a wonderful guy, but he told us one day in class, he said, sometimes the best spiritual care a person can get is a good night's sleep. And
Yes.
and it's all related to the spiritual, the physical, and the mental, right? Because people. You touched on, you hit some of my kind of hot button issues, the social media and computer games, things like that, those quick dopamine hits without any effort, without any physical effort at all. So we're lab rats that are addicted to that dopamine reward with the least expenditure of effort or sweat equity possible. We don't spend time moving around, physical fitness, and so we're tired at the end of the day, but our bodies haven't been exercised.
You just gave me a piece of the puzzle that I'm going to use every time now. I talk about, but I never talk about the fact that there's minimal expenditure of actual energy. Boom. You just put a round in my magazine.
Well, if it's good, it's not original to me. I mean, I was a psych major back in college, but it was full disclosure. It was, and I'm gonna have to look up the guy's name, but it was a guy, a guest that Jocko Willink had on his podcast. I can look it up, tell you who said that. But yeah, he said that's the issue is we want that reward and we get addicted to that reward. And of course, we're humans. We try to. It's an adaptive behavior to expend as little effort as possible. And on video games, there's no effort.
Yeah.
Oh, social media too. Likes or angry replies.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I've definitely seen it's almost like a polarization within the soldiers, right? So there's some that go into that category, and then there's some that choose the physical fitness, and but either way, they're looking for it, right? And they're trying to find it. It's definitely out there. I think it's one of the hardest things to go back to what we talked about at the beginning. My first deployments, like when we deployed, we'd go down range, we'd be in a barracks or we'd be in a tent or something like that. And maybe there was one phone center that you had to call back and get some operator, and maybe you got a 10-minute call back home once a week. And then you'd go and play cards. You go play spades, you go play dominoes, you go, do all that type of stuff. But you're doing it as a group, right? And you're learning about each other, and you're building that relationship that probably Audie Murphy was probably talking about a little bit. And now, as we've evolved through the wars, you have literally I had soldiers FaceTiming with their family back home, as I'm trying to get their mind set on the mission. They're worried about their spouse losing the keys in the garage, that morning. That constant contact is something that's always there. But what I'm getting at is it takes away, the social media, the over communication, that quick dopamine stuff. It kind of takes away from that need to bond as a squad, a platoon, or whatever that you need to do. But I have noticed, as soon as you get thrust into some type of very challenging situation where it is life and death and stuff, that group galvanizes real quick, and then they are inseparable, and it kind of goes into that. But I think that's one of the challenges that we as leaders have today with soldiers is trying to find that balance where we don't want to take away from to the point where no one wants to come into our organizations because they're like, well, we can't have any of the stuff that we want. But we also need to find a way to keep them engaged, right, in part of not being totally distracted by that stuff.
In this process of 20 years of war and being able to train so many units, punching out, coming back, one battalion commander told me, and it was kind of a revelation to him, like he just put the pieces together. He said, we had one deployment when we were in the field for a year.
Yep.
He said, there was no barracks, there was no electricity, and he said we had 0 suicides, and we came home and we had 0 problems. He said, you did a field workout, you did a field shower, you play cards. You mentioned playing spades. Mm-hmm. He said, you play cards, you talk, and then you go to bed and you get a good night's sleep. He said, in retrospect, being in the field in this Spartan environment, and Spartan's a really good word for us to wrap our mind around, but being in the field in this Spartan environment without electricity, without Game Boys and television and FaceTiming and computers, it was probably the best thing we could possibly have done. He said, I will hold that unit at that time and that deployment and that return as the single healthiest battalion in the U.S. Armed Forces at that point in time. And again, it was like a revelation to him that this process of not having all those luxuries was the best gift we could give to our soldiers for a year. And he said they were invigorated. They were re-enlisted at an incredible rate. There was limited suicides, none is what he said. And so just there's something to think about in what you're saying. What we want to give our soldiers. We want to be loving parents. We want to give our children everything, but we know we can give them too much. Mm-hmm. Where do we draw the line for long-term survival? And I think this idea of being deployed and going into this Spartan environment has a lot to be said for it if we look things over and we learn the lessons of 20 years of war.
You've got that sense of belonging. There's a clear sense of purpose and mission, and what you do matters. It's life and death for the people to your left and to your right. And you've got each other's backs. And
I think that's it. You build mutual trust, and if you have trust within your whatever squad, group, platoon, there's very little that you can't do.
Right. Right. Yeah. And if service members trust their leaders, they'll do anything. They'll run to the sound of the guns.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, Dave, the big idea for our podcast, Hope in the Trenches, is living and leading with hope. And there are a lot of things in society, in our world, things that would cause us despair. We're more connected in more ways to more people than ever before, but yet isolation and loneliness and just being discouraged are epidemic. What gives you hope?
Well, I've got 2 books coming out in the next 6 months. One is on hunting, and it will be the hunting what on combat and on killing was their field, and they really work together. Archaeologically speaking, hunting and combat were common skills, and killing is the common denominator among them all. Growing up hunting and so on and so forth really empowers us in so many ways. But the other book coming out is On Spiritual Combat Volume 2. And I really think that it's going to be important. On Spiritual Combat Volume 1 was a Christian Book Award finalist. We really touched some lives. It's really taken off. And I think the second book is even better. But we talk about really wrapping your mind around eternity. I'm ready to stand up and die for my nation. I'm just the total 100% patriot. I will fight for my nation. And my nation is the worldly guarantee of passing on to my children and grandchildren what I believe are necessary resources. But sooner or later, our nation will fall. Our son will die, but eternity continues. And it's so important. One of the things we pick from Erasmus, and Erasmus took the 22 lessons to remain virtuous in a violent world. And he said, just put everything in perspective. by understanding how unimportant things in this world are compared to eternity. It's just almost impossible to wrap your mind around. Eternity goes on infinitely. But if we reach out and make eternity finite, then this little time on earth shrinks to insignificant nothing. And so I think the spiritual side of the house has got to be the baseline everything else rests upon. To understand that we're here for a brief period of time, and our mission here on earth is to do as much good as humanly possible. Love God and love others. That's the baseline we build upon. If we really love others, then we'll bring them to the knowledge of salvation. And we do that by doing good works. Do good and grow you not weary of doing good. Galatians 6:9, my life verse. Yeah? And then give the honor and glory to God. Because if we seek the glory for ourselves, it's empty, it's hollow. But if we give him the glory, he gives us love, joy, peace, and a bunch of other neat things. And so I think that investment in that dynamic, it lies at the heart of our ability to keep it all in perspective. I mean, just remember, sooner or later, our nation will pass. Our star will die, but eternity continues. And if you have even the faintest idea that there might be an eternity, then there's nothing on earth more important than getting it and embracing it and applying it. If you have just a remote idea, it might be true and you wish it was true, then that's a little seed of belief. And plant that little seed of belief and ask for more. Ask for more faith. And the disciples asked Jesus, how do we get more faith? The man said, I believe, Lord, help my unbelief. Oh, Jesus did what he asked him to do. So I just think that spiritual has got to be the foundation. As I get older, I'm able to embrace it more. And it helps us keep everything in perspective. And I mean it, just never lose track of this. Sooner or later, our nation will fall, our planet will die, our sun will die, but eternity continues. And keep just a little part of yourself focused on eternity and recognize how infinitely more important that is. And that this time on earth, that we've got a goal and we've been given a mission. And that's on spiritual combat, 30 missions for victorious warfare. What is our mission? And then why do bad things happen? We're not God's puppets. He didn't make us his puppets. A loving father would not make his children puppets. He's given us free will. And that means people make mistakes and people do bad things. And it's our job to deal with that. And when you say, God, do something, he said, I did. I sent you. And recognize we're not his puppets. A loving father wouldn't do that. We're given free will, and that means people make mistakes, and that means people have bad decisions. So people like us, they're going to clean up those bad decisions and help people and protect people, and we're the sheepdogs. And I'll wrap up with this. We say in volume 2, the idea of being God's faithful sheepdogs. I know when we get there, we'll understand things we can't even comprehend. But right now, I've got a dog, a little chocolate lab. If I let her off the leash, she'll roll in something stinky, and she'll get in trouble. I still love her. And God sees every bad thing we do, and he still loves us. And my dog doesn't understand most of what I do. What I'm doing right now, she can't comprehend. I'm online, I'm reading, even talking. She can't understand speech. She can barely understand. I think that's how we are with God right now. It's all I can do to think about being God's faithful dog. And a man named Will Rogers said, if you get to thinking you're a person of some importance, try telling another man's dog what to do. You ever do that? The dog looked at you and said, look, I don't know much. I'm just a dog, but I know this. I'm not your dog. Don't tell people, once you have given yourself to Jesus, once you've embraced eternal salvation, the evil one can come to you and say, hey, I'm not your dog. And there's great freedom that comes with that.
Well, that's a beautiful thought to end on, Dave. Thanks so much for being so generous with your time with us today. God bless you and your family and your work.
And to you, my brother. And again, both of you, it's been an honor. You want to finish the book? Let's do it again. And we'll talk about that in more depth. I'd be honored to have you on board.
I'd love that. Thanks, Dave.
That's it. God bless.
This podcast is produced by the Oregon National Guard Public Affairs Office. My prayer for you is that wherever you find yourself, that you might find hope for today and strength for the ambiguity and chaos of life. Blessings on the rest of your day.